Good evening, Rowan. It's the 18th of December 2015 and it's about 11 o'clock in the evening, and it being Friday evening, I bet you can guess why I'm making this video this evening. That's right, it's to reassure you that I won't be seducing any priests over the weekend. Now I bet you're getting really fed up of me saying that, aren't you? But I bet I haven't said it as many times as you went round saying that I was doing it before to all those different people you went round slandering me to. So I've still got a bit of catching up to do yet, so I'm going to continue to reassure you on the priest seduction front. Anyway, I bet you've been missing me this week, haven't you? Well, I thought it might take a while for you to ponder the video I made on Monday and the letter that I read then, so I've very thoughtfully given you this extended period of time to be mulling that over. But I thought I could talk a little bit this evening about the talk that you gave at St Paul's Cathedral about Christmas. What was it called? The Meaning of Christmas or something like that? Anyway, it's quite a long lecture, about an hour and a half, including questions. So I'm just going to comment on two things that you said this evening, and then on Sunday evening I'll go on to talk about a couple of other things that you said as well. So anyway, here's one of the comments that you make. Everything is soaked through with the divine energy, and you emphasise energy. Now you do this quite a lot. You did it, for example, in the talk about Teresa of Avila that I commented on at Dedham Parish Church, and repeatedly over the years you've talked about divine energy or energy from God, and you've really emphasised energy. And I think that the reason that you're doing that is because when I wrote the final letter I wrote at St Michael's Church complaining about David Peat, the one that eventually led to me being thrown out of the church for not looking in the right direction a couple of times during the service and things like that, you know, major catastrophes like that, I did say that I thought the energy with which he behaved in such an abusive way was satanic. So in order to convince me that it wasn't satanic, really, that anyone who acts with any energy, this energy comes from God, you keep emphasising this divine energy all the time, as if I'm suddenly going to think that all of David Peat's abusive behaviour and satanic filth and satanic doctrine that he preached, all of that really came from God, because energy comes from God. I think that's why you're emphasising this energy. But what you're forgetting is that I'm a very devoted Christian, you see, so I know God, in a sense. You could say that I know God. So I know that God doesn't act in this disgusting, filthy, harassing way. So it's quite obvious that this energy that David Peat had doesn't come from God, because Jesus did tell us we will know them by their fruits, and his fruits are just disaster, aren't they, and abuse and really just disgusting behaviour, flying into tantrums when he didn't get his own way and stuff like that. So this energy, you say, doesn't come from God. But not only am I a very devoted Christian, so I know God, so to speak, I'm also a very competent theologian, so I know crap as well. And you're talking crap. You could say that Hitler had a lot of energy, but does anybody think it came from God? I don't think so. I mean, he was a very energetic person. He put himself about a lot. He was a very charismatic speaker. Many people admired him. Does that mean it all came from God? I don't think so. So just because someone acts with energy doesn't mean that that energy comes from God. Anyway, moving on. You say, we're told in the letter to the Hebrews that he feels tempted. This is Jesus that you're talking about. His will sometimes appears to wobble like ours. There's a state of uncertainty, and yet the life moves on, the decisions are made, the unbroken course and flow of God's life in Jesus continues. Well, this is just complete and utter nonsense. I mean, the passage that you're referring to is in Hebrews chapter 4, and it's only a couple of verses, verses 14 to 16, and this is what it says. Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God. Let us hold fast to our confession, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who in every respect has been tested as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So it says we have a high priest who in every respect has been tested as we are, yet without sin. Well, this is one translation of the Greek word here. Pyratso, I think that's how you pronounce it. Which means tempted or tried, put to trial, put to the proof, that kind of thing. And there is an account of Jesus being tempted by the devil in Matthew chapter 4, beginning at the first verse, and I'm going to read it because it's quite relevant to what I'm about to say. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. He fasted 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was famished. The tempter came and said to him, If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. But he answered, It is written, One does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to the holy city and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command His angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, so that you will not dash your foot against a stone. Jesus said to him, Again it is written, Do not put the Lord your God to the test. Again the devil took him to a very high mountain, and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendour, and he said to him, All these I will give you, if you fall down and worship me. Jesus said to him, Away with you, Satan, for it is written, Worship the Lord your God, and serve only him. Then the devil left him, and suddenly angels came and waited on him. Well, let's have a look at what you say again. We're told in the letter to the Hebrews that he feels tempted. His will sometimes appears to wobble like ours. Well, that isn't true. What does it have to do with his will? You see, because you don't believe in Satan, you think this is just a psychological process that's going on in his head, that he's considering these things. Shall I bow down and worship Satan, and all these kingdoms will be given to me, and so on. That's what you think. He's thinking, he's entertaining the idea. Because you don't believe in Satan, so you don't believe it's Satan tempting him. But if you were entertaining the idea, then that would be a sin. So it can't be true, really. If he's kind of mulling this over, do you know what I mean? Thinking about it, entertaining the idea. I mean, is it just that the thought came into his head? Is that what you mean? You complicate things, you see, when you take Satan out of the picture. This is why you have to tie yourself up in knots. and other people do as well, as to why there's evil and suffering in the world. They've taken Satan out of the picture, which, if you do that, then that means that God must have created evil then, must have created suffering. Once you've done away with Satan, that means God created evil, because God created everything. And really, the way that evil came into the world is that Satan disobeyed God, tried to usurp God, and then tempted human beings into doing the same thing. So, if you believe in the devil, you don't have to tie yourself up in knots over these things, do you? So, I don't think that his will does appear to wobble, because what the gospel clearly tells us is that Satan appeared to him and tempted him or tested him. That's the implication. Not kind of temptation as we use it in English these days, that you're really probably going to do it. Do you know what I mean? It's not quite the same. It doesn't quite mean the same thing. I mean, the most familiar form of the Lord's Prayer is lead us not into temptation, but you could also say save us from the time of trial. So it's not quite the same as the way we use temptation colloquially in English these days. But then again, you see, I think there's a political agenda behind this as well, because there usually is behind the things you do, isn't there? So I said, you know, that God had united himself with my soul, and I used St. John of the Cross's symbol of the ember, the way that wood is turned into fire in an ember, and it's impossible to separate the fire from the ember, from the wood in the ember, because the two have become one. And I said that even God can't do it, because if God wills to unite himself with a soul, then he can unwill it later on, because his will is perfect. And what you're saying, his will appears to wobble like ours. Right. There's a state of uncertainty. There isn't, you know. There isn't a state of uncertainty. God's will doesn't wobble. And like I just said not long ago, I know God as a Christian, and as a competent theologian, I know crap when I hear it as well. Was that really the best you could do, to suggest that God's going to change his mind and run off and abandon me? I mean, let's just say, for example, that I'd got married to a faithful man. If I'd got married to a faithful man, then he wouldn't run off and abandon me, would he? So, are we expecting that God would act with less integrity than a faithful man? I don't think so. So this is just another one of the bizarre things that you've come out with. Anyway, have a nice weekend, and don't forget, be alert. And also, don't forget, I won't be seducing any priests this weekend either, so you can relax. Hasta la próxima.
And in this life that begins at Bethlehem, there is no little corner or gap where humanity breaks off and God starts. Everything is soaked through with the divine energy and love and light. This is a human life. And as another carol says, tears and smiles like us he knew. In the pages of the Bible, we read the same thing repeatedly. The Jesus we encounter in the New Testament is no Superman. He asks, he weeps, he depends. We're told in the letter to the Hebrews that he feels tempted. His will sometimes appears to wobble, like ours. There's a state of uncertainty, and yet the life moves on. The decisions are made, and the unbroken course and flow of God's life in Jesus continues.